they're not doing it for desperation. They're doing it for profit. Okay, why do they need profit?
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Well, that's not true because we don't do that. In fact, one of the points we make specifically is,
you show subway crime to talk about all these inflated crime numbers. Crime is down in New York City in 2023 by every metric.
Down compared to what?
Down compared to 2021 and 2022.
Don't change the subject.
No,
you accused us of publishing videos we don't publish.
If it's down in compared to 2021, and there was a giant year-over-year increase from 2020 to 2021, then you're talking about something that's down. It wasn't
giant. It was a small bump from the pandemic.
A 47% increase in homicide in the city of New York is not a small bump.
It was homicides have been on a precipitous decline since the 70s.
Well, I don't know. I don't think it's I mean, if it's like 100 and now it's 147, I wouldn't necessarily say that's a really in like a city of, I mean, in like an area with like a couple million people, that's not really a big bump, honestly. Do we give it the lookie? Boy, they be lying. Oh man. The 2v1 as well. Crazy. Guys, wait a second, I guess. Look at that. Look at that. Look at the giga jump. You see that? Half the city's gone. Oh Lord. Oh Lord, half the city's gone, bro. It's over. Well, for a little bit they reverted, like 10 years. There's ups and downs. I don't know, man. There's gonna be ups and downs when it comes to crime all the time. Okay? It's just not like a real issue. Okay.
Since the 80s, since the 90s. There was a bump because of desperation in the pandemic, and now it's back down in 2023. So, that's irrefutable. That's the NYPD's own data. That's on all major crimes.
Yeah,
murders,
it's back to normal.
Larcenies,
so this
robberies.
This is an argument I'm often confronted with, and it's actually pretty terrible. So crime is down from the peak for sure, right? In some years in New York City, we had 2,100 murders. I think that's the largest ever in the history of the city of New York. However, my standard isn't, it's not as bad as the worst time in the history of the city of New York. When I see murders jump year over year from about 319 to 469.
What do you mean year over year? The 2 years that I just
year
listed?
Over year, as in from 2020 to 2021. That would be a year over year increase.
1 year?
That is a dramatic increase, and it's the largest since, I believe, 2010. The greatest year over year increase of all time in the city of New York, by the way. But it's all the way back to 2010 numbers.
It's down.
Yeah, it's down compared to the increase, but it's not down compared to 2019.
This was a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic where people's desperation and
it's down compared to... Wait, let me see. I mean, it's down compared to like 2010. Over like a 10-year period, it's still down. But like, oh yeah, it's actually, it's still down, actually. Since 2010 and I think 2016 actually as well. Okay. Mental
health was severely harmed. People were out of work, and that kind of desperation leads to more crime. That's the reality of how crime works.
Sometimes
poverty leads to crime.
And then it goes back
I would imagine.
This is inaccurate.
Why do you think 25 people got shoved in front of trains last year?
I don't know, dude.
Well, it's a city of what, 8 million people? I don't know. And how do you know they were shoved in front? How do you know they weren't like, what you mean purposefully shoved in front of trains? Oh no, the city is falling apart.
That's a legitimate question. You're saying that poverty and desperation results in crime. I'm wondering why it is that you've had these
25
homeless guys. They've been predominantly, I think it's almost entirely these homeless guys shoving people in front of trains. Last year it was 25. And so that's a mental health problem.
I mean, we do have a mental health problem in this country. We have an issue with not having socialized healthcare, where people are unable to access healthcare, mental health care in particular, but also every other kind of healthcare. I mean, 28 million uninsured people in this country. That's a massive problem. I mean, what is your stance on Medicare for all and healthcare?
I'm for universal healthcare.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, I think we'd have to have some kind of like basic coverage for universal standard, meaning like if you're having an episode, this is particularly where we bring you when we help you. If you're broken bones, flu, things that it's like relatively simple and knowledge based. The challenge with it is that we got limited space, we got limited doctors, but I don't think we can function as a society if we have people just dying in the streets like we do with drug abuse and
Well, then you should promote housing first policies on your program. Like in Houston, what they did, there was a pilot program under
No, did they buy
Obama.
out? Is you going to talk about the hotel?
Grant, and they reduced homelessness by 63% over 10 years because they guaranteed housing. Do you think that the 25 examples that you cite last year, and there's like over 2 million subway riders a day. So you cherry picking that, I feel like is...
It's not cherry picking. It's, you asked, or you mentioned that desperation leads to crime.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering why it is specifically that we saw this increase. Is it like someone's desperate, but why murder somebody? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, they're experiencing a mental health episode. We do not have adequate health care in this country, mental health care.
Well, you say that crime is from desperation. Well, then why did these 25 crimes happen once in a city of 8 million people? I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know why literally every single crime. What? I don't know. Come on. I don't know, man.
I hear a lot of talk often after mass shootings.
I don't know literally every single crime that happens.
Mental health is the most important thing in this country. Then we should
you don't
have
know what was going on
so everyone can have access to it.
Somebody was pushed.
And that
if they were actually pushed.
Paired with a housing first policy where cities don't become urban centers for just bridge and tunnelers who want to come in and see a show, or for restaurant associations, where places where people can actually live and there's guaranteed housing for people. If we were able to do that, we would be able to drastically reduce the crime that you guys are talking about here.
So when you're talking about poverty leading to crime, like what is that based on? Because after Prohibition was repealed,
all of human history,
during the Great Depression, crime fell. During the Great Recession, people with your line of thinking thought we would see a crime spike nationwide. It didn't happen. You could actually look at the crime wave if you wanted to pull it up. That didn't occur. And that was the largest recession in the history of this country since the Great Depression. So what we've seen throughout American history is poverty not leading to crime. What we actually see is the opposite, that crime drives areas into poverty. We look at store closures across the country due to the fact that we have shoplifting.
So yeah, so this is something that this guy's been like on for a while. So basically he's claiming that people don't become, like, crime doesn't make people poor. People become poor because crime. So people just start committing crimes for like fun. They think it's hilarious. And that leaves places to become poor because they do so much crime. And so they become so they do more crime because they think it's even funnier the poorer it gets. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. There were many areas that increased, where crime increased. I don't know. It's just weird, bro. Careful shark, crime is hilarious. No. Prohibition created. Wait, I want to hear that again.
Not leading to crime. The Great Depression didn't occur. And that was the largest. Look at the crime wave if you wanted to pull it up. That didn't occur. And that was the largest action. After Prohibition was repealed,
all of human history,
during the Great Depression, crime fell. During the Great Recession, people with your line of thinking thought we would see a crime spike nationwide. It didn't happen.
Crime fell? Well, they removed the crime? Is he not include what? So wait. Oh, after you took away Prohibition, crime fell? Well, they stopped something that a lot of people did from being a crime.
You could actually look at the crime wave if you wanted to pull it up. That didn't occur. And that was the largest recession in the history of this country since the Great Depression. So what we've seen throughout American history is poverty not leading to crime. What we actually see is the opposite, that crime drives areas into poverty. We look at store closures across the country due to the fact that we have shoplifting. That leads to decaying in the neighborhoods. When people abandon the neighborhoods and you see this blight, that has a psychological impact on people, and that drives people to commit these crimes.
I mean, you're working backward.
Wait, what?
When people abandon the neighborhoods and you see this blight, that has a psychological impact on people, and that drives people to commit these crimes.
Oh my goodness. Walgreens left. Must commit crime. I mean, it can make people more desperate, so they could keep doing more crime. The more desperate they are.
I mean, you're working backwards from...
You're actually working backwards.
Wait, but no. Poverty, clearly, this is a very simple concept, leads to something like shoplifting. Why would someone shoplift based on a personal pathology?
It's funny.
They're shoplifting because they're desperate.
Not necessarily. So we have a lot of lax shoplifting laws in California, for example.
So they're
and
doing
what they
it just
find
for
is
fun?
we have a lot of organized retail theft because there's no consequences for it.
That's profit.
For instance,
people are trying to make money. Well, and they're desperate, and we have untold levels of income inequality in this country.
Well, is it income inequality or poverty?
Since the late 70s, 900%. That's the increase in CEO pay versus 12% for the working class in this country. You don't think that leads to levels of desperation?
So wait, is income inequality the cause or is poverty the cause? Because those are two different things.
I mean, they go hand in hand.
They really don't.
Yes, they do. Because all the wealth is going towards the CEOs and to the billionaires in this country.
But it's not a zero-sum economy. But also, if income inequality is the driver of crime, then how come we saw a giant crime decline after the mid-90s when income inequality was going up? In fact, we saw this happen. If income inequality is the driver of crime, then how come we saw a giant crime decline after the mid-90s when income inequality...
I don't think she said driver of crime. It feeds into it.
Then how come we saw a giant crime decline after the mid-90s when income inequality was going up? In fact, we saw this happen all the way to 2019.
Can you repeat that?
We had a giant crime decline from around 1995, 1996 nationwide from all the way to 2019 while income inequality was rising during that period of time.
Right.
So why would that occur if income inequality is driving crime?
I mean, I'm
okay, so two things. For one, we're throwing a lot of people in jail. For one, we're throwing a lot of people in. Now we have 25% of the world's population. So I mean, a lot of those people who we could have had helped have like a better life, they're just like rotting in prison instead. Yeah, we have 25% of the world's population. We just throw people in jail for like longer and longer prison terms. So that's a really big one.
Not exactly sure you're the expert, but I do know that you're saying that there was an increase in crime in 2021 and 2022, and it doesn't matter now that it's going back down to 2023 levels.
This is just New York City.
I can't see this. Yeah.
I just pulled up New York City.
Look at that. Right. Exactly.
So at the start of 1990, crime was at its highest, and it dropped rather massively into just before 2000, where it continued to decline. And then from 2019 into 2020, we see a huge increase. That's pre-pandemic. Right. So there's a couple interesting things to point out there.
No, to be clear, that's not pre-pandemic. That's the year-over-year increase. So it would be in the year 2020. To be clear, so 2019 would be the low number.
The increase actually, the draw is before 2020. Meaning that could be 2018 to 19. Then, if that's the point you're making.
No, it's I've seen these numbers. I'm telling you, you're reading this chart wrong, because in New York City, do they have the raw number of homicides on the side? If you track it, you have around, because this is just murders right here. Right. Guys, you have about 300, and then it jumps to about 469.
I mean, crime dropped everywhere.
I mean, it did go up. That's true. It also went back down.
Lead gasoline was outlawed. There is a massive connection. Lead paint, lead gasoline, predominantly affecting poor and lower income people, which probably did contribute to some of the increase in volatility in that kind of instance.
I completely agree. I read that report. It was fascinating that when we started taking lead out of the atmosphere, crime started to drop. But that would also make the argument that it's not poverty driving crime. It was like chemical imbalance or something.
It's both. It's absolutely both.
Well, I think it would play a role. Like the lead would play a role because it was in gasoline, so it was in the air. Yeah, so it's impacting everyone.
It depresses brain function and things like that.
True. Yeah. But I think public policy has a huge impact as well, because again, we saw a dramatic crime. This crime wave started in the 1960s, right? And this is when we started embracing this idea that poverty was the root cause of crime, that this was more the realm of the social workers, all things that sound really familiar to today. And from 1960 all the way to 1979, the incarceration rate, even though in raw numbers it was rising, was dropping per capita. So we saw this crime increase, and what you would end up getting in 1979 for murder on average was something like 5 years. For rape, it was something like 3.4 years. And obviously, like, this created a problem because we just weren't prosecuting people. This is why we ended up going with a mass incarceration solution, which, by the way, did work. And all these other policies to get tough on crime. You laugh, but you're definitely wrong.
Mean, mass incarceration, we incarcerate more people than any other country.
We have the highest rate of violent crime for any modern Western country.
I mean, I don't have that statistic in front of me.
Wait, here, I'll need it again.
We incarcerate more people than any other country.
We have the highest rate of violent crime for any modern Western country.
I mean, I don't have that statistic in front of me, but we still so how does that connect to the mass incarceration point? If it worked, then what does the violent crime rate have to do with it? You just want to warehouse more people?
No, I didn't say when I say
yes,
it worked, we had we started expanding the prison population seriously in the 1980s to the 1990s. If you go to the Brennan Center for Criminal Justice, which is a left-wing organization, they say post the year 2000, mass incarceration lost its effectiveness. But most of the mass incarceration was pre the year 2000. So obviously it had some impact, and it ranges. Low estimates are about 6% on the crime rate, which is very low, but the high estimates are about 30%. And the reason it worked is because the philosophy behind mass incarceration is pretty simple. What you're trying to do is incapacitate criminals, because the same criminals are often reoffending. You brought up shoplifting earlier. You can actually pull up an article to find out that the same 300 people in New York City represent a third of the shoplifting arrests total for a single year.
Probably because they're incredibly impoverished and they need to find a way to actually sustain their livelihoods in this country.
That's put a very good way. That's phrased very well, to maintain their livelihoods.
Well, so, no, I mean, no, they're light.
Well, to not be on the street. Yeah, that's what she means. Also, okay, so there's a couple of things. All right, here. Here, I want to tell you one thing, all right? Because we don't talk about this super often. If there's anybody out there who tells you that they have a definitive reason for why there was a massive crime drop in the 90s, run, okay? Because they're lying to you. There's no universally agreed upon or even super widely agreed upon reason, like single reason for why there was a massive drop in crime in the 90s, okay? So don't believe somebody if they tell you that they have like a definitive reason for why it happened. There are two big things that played into it. One, we just threw everybody in jail for even longer prison sentences. And so they wouldn't even have the time to be able to get out and commit more crimes because they're spending like the rest of their really active part of their lives in jail, okay? And two, the average age of an American has moved up by 5 years as well. So we are older as well as in jail. And so those two things are two big predictors of if you're going to be committing crime, you know? It's way harder to commit crime in prison, and it's way harder to commit crime when you're old. Not to say 35 is old. I'm just saying that the average age is 35. That means a lot of people are much older than that. So age is one of the biggest predictors of if somebody's going to be committing crime. The younger you are, honestly, the more likely you are to commit crime.
Life is a better way to maintain.
Sure. But like, I guess my point is, some of them certainly are desperate. But when you see videos of a guy like shoveling stuff into a garbage bag, that's not desperation.
But again, this is what you do, Tim. You return to anecdotal examples when I'm trying to talk about.
We're talking about just the 300 people.
And I am talking
about. Which is the
about
anecdotal evidence.
What 300 people?
He said the same 300 people, the ones committing the crime.
Is it a golden garbage bag?
These specific individuals are doing it for profit.
Okay, so we should have a system of mass incarceration because there are 300.
Well, yeah, they want profit because they want money. Well, they're not doing it for desperation. They're doing it for profit. Okay, why do they need profit? Why do they need profit?
Because I'm talking to you now. There are 300 repeat offenders.
No, we should incapacitate repeat offenders so they stop offending.
Got it. So this is all about the fact that you're not in favor of bail reform because in New York State, which is now currently being rolled back, we decided that we weren't going to require cash bail for nonviolent felonies and for misdemeanors. And you think that that's a good policy?
To not require cash bail?
Yeah.
No,
I think that we're rolling it back.
I think look, if you're concerned about people not being able to get out of jail because of their financial means, then I can understand reducing or even eliminating the cash bail system. Because I understand if you don't have a lot of money, even though you really only have to throw down 10% for bail in most cases, unless it's like a set figure for the bond, then I get that argument. But what you need, and the state of New York desperately needs this, is some kind of threat assessment. Like, you should be able to hold somebody if they present themselves as a danger or a repeat offender, regardless of bail, without bail, so that they don't continue to reoffend.
Okay, but do you know what happens when people are held in Rikers, for example, in a pre-detention?
What? Wait, you're telling me, is he trying to tell me that in New York State, judges can't decide whether to hold someone without bail based on the threat of the person? You're telling me they can't do that in New York? Because I feel like that's untrue. I haven't looked at it, but that sounds like a massive, huge giga lie. Citation. If anybody can find anything on that, I'd love to see it, because that seemed like a giga lie as far as I've seen. Do people even have 10%? No, probably not. That's why bail bond companies exist, that like pay it for you, and then they charge you an exorbitant rate afterwards, and then they turn you into their bail slave, and they give you an exorbitant interest rate on the money that they handed out to you, and then collect money from you for the rest of your life until you die.
Center, how many deaths have happened there before they're even convicted of a crime?
Look, again, that's an issue for how the jailing system works in New York City, and I'm in favor of building out the jail capacity. Because
you're talking about cash bail, though. That is exactly the point that we're discussing here.
Yeah.
Right. So you're in favor of people being held before they're convicted of a crime.
Yes.
In Rikers.
If they show a propensity to reoffend, 100%.
What is a propensity to reoffend?
A history, like being arrested over and over again, prior convictions, yes.
So you think that they should be held in a prison that has been...
It's a jail, but yes.
Or jail, excuse me. A jail that has been proven to be one of the worst conditions in the country.
Well, it doesn't have to be specifically Rikers Island.
Dozens of deaths just this year. Even if they haven't been committed,
they could be on house arrest. Like, all he says is incapacitate them. I don't know. It makes it sound like they're chained to the walls. You could have them on house arrest, honestly. And yeah, Rikers is a really bad place. A lot of people got COVID. A lot of people wasn't Rikers leaking and freezing, actually, a couple of years ago.
A crime.
Convicted of a crime. Yeah, for sure.
But that's very anti-constitutional and anti-democratic.
How is it anti-constitutional?
The Fourth Amendment. It violates the Fourth Amendment.
Protects you from illegal search and seizures.
Well, I mean, you are the right to a speedy trial. People are held there. Fifth Amendment. Yes.
I do think we should have reform on the speedy trial side, but the idea that it's unconstitutional to hold somebody pre-trial is ridiculous. Our law is based on English common law.
Dan.
He's doing the thing again.
We're all bad.
Our laws.
There's so many amendments. There's actually too many.
The reason we have jails is that you would actually be held in a dungeon awaiting trial. So it's like built into the system. Bail is like a courtesy. It's actually a progressive reform in response to that, where you lay down some kind of capital in place of yourself.
How much money do you want to spend on jails in New York City?
As much as it takes.
So just warehousing people before they're convicted of anything.
Well, again, it's not warehousing everybody, but if you have a propensity to reoffend, I think judges should be able to have judgment. It's kind of in the name, and assess these people and hold them.
So you just want to give it to the judgment of the judges. And it doesn't...
Yes, I would like the judges to have judgment, yes.
Okay, but there should be guardrails in place to prevent judges from... I mean, judges are human beings. They can be unjust as well. I don't really put them on the pedestal that you do.
Obviously, I'm not in favor of like $1 million bond for somebody who's arrested for shoplifting.
$1 more billion for jaywalking. So yeah,
you can have guardrails from the legislature, but they can't assess dangerousness right now in the state of New York.
They assess it in ways, the reason we put this law into place, which is now being rolled back, that were deemed inherently racist. They deem that it was disproportionately black and brown people who are warehousing.
Okay, but how's that racist though?
Because at their discretion, it was implemented in a racist way. It's
but if
the
you
same
look
way
at the crime statistics, they're
there you go.
disproportionately black and Hispanic.
So this is what the reality is for you: is you believe that black and Hispanic people inherently are committing. When did I say inherently? Crimes. I mean, if
you pull up like NYPD crime data, for instance, since you brought up stop and frisk, you can look at the shootings, like the shooting suspects in any given year. And if you find me a year where 92% or greater is not black or Hispanic in terms of the shooting suspects, then I mean, I would be shocked, because I've looked at it for the past 20 years.
So that's the cop's discretion. So
it's you get a report,
right,
and you get a description of the suspect, and they are 92% every single year or above black or Hispanic.
Can I tell you guys a very famous New York story? There was
here we go.
Black cop.
Here we go.
He went to Central Park and started giving out tickets to white couples having picnics and drinking wine. And he said public alcohol consumption is a crime in the city, and he started giving these uppity yuppies tickets.
Right.
He got in serious trouble. The reason he did it was because the cops would go into the black neighborhoods and give people drinking 40s on their stoops tickets. And he said, how can these people at their own homes, on their own porches, get a ticket for drinking booze? Then when I go into Central Park and say, we're going to apply the same standard, I get in trouble for it. So New York's got serious problems. Even Bloomberg, like, that guy's awful.
Thank you, Tim. Very cool.
I'm not going to say that.
The reason I just want to cut you off because you mentioned Bloomberg, and I want to respond to what you said. Under Bloomberg, 90% of the stop and frisks that were done were, by the way, they didn't find anything, but 90% targeted Black and brown people. So you're taking.
So the highest number, by the way, is 86%, not 90%. But go ahead.
You're taking the data and using what the cops did, where they over-police in certain areas, and then pretending like there's an overrepresentation inherently, criminally, in those kinds of populations, and it's a racist argument.
So you're wrong in a bunch of different ways. So let me just like run through them. So first and foremost, the highest year was 86%. And that was the year with the dramatic increase in stops. And if you ask me if I'm in favor of just expanding stop and frisk, which is different from Giuliani's stop, question, and frisk, although, you know, you might not be interested in that specific difference, to the levels that Bloomberg did, I would say it's unnecessary. It aggravates people. It creates a whole bunch of problems. That being said, they're not over-targeted because, again, there is no year during the entire tenure of Bloomberg where the shooting suspects were any less than 92%. So what the NYPD does, because it's the most data-driven police force in the entire world, is they map crime through a system called CompStat. When there's a lot of shootings in a specific area, they send the police to those areas. The stops, questions, and frisks all relate to where the shootings are, and it just so
disheartening since I see so many comments under this calling Emma evil. I mean, like, she walked into the Echo Dome. Like, of course, there are going to be a bunch of people saying that. You got to understand that you're not talking to like the vast majority of people. The vast majority of people are going to just like come out believing exactly what they believed before. But there are people in there who can be swayed, who can find like a lot of stuff very interesting, and who will listen. So don't feel disheartened because like some people didn't listen. You'll always get that with a discussion. You're never going to be able to change everyone's mind. You have to want your mind. You have to be open and or want your mind to be changed to have it changed. People can't do it for you.
Happens to be those areas are Black or Hispanic.
Right, but do you get accosted on the street by cops regularly in New York City?
It happened to me when I was younger, yes, but like not
okay.
now.
But do you understand
but to your point about hit rate, because you brought it up, hit rate was not the goal of stop, question, and frisk. Like, this is one of the things where you're like, oh, well, this program didn't work because my standard that I look for arbitrarily shows that it was ineffective. That's like saying a plane doesn't work because it's not a good submarine.
No, it's
like,
not
that doesn't
arbitrary.
make any sense.
90% of the stop and frisks came up with nothing.
True, but the point was to deter the carrying of firearms.
Have you done illegal drugs in your life?
Maybe.
I have. I could have been stopped and
no, Emma, no, Emma, FBI agent is just scrambling. He's like, we got her, boys. Emma, no, Emma, no. The Tim Pool dungeon is actually a honeypot. Emma, please, listen. Walter White screaming from the car. I've never actually watched Breaking Bad.
Frisked. And I could have gone to prison, or I could have been held if I had a little bit less money in Rikers indefinitely until my trial came, because a cop just decided, hey, I'm going to stop and frisk you, but they wouldn't do that to me because I'm a white woman.
That's nice, but anyway, it's about shootings, and the point of the program, and this is stated quite literally, to deter people from carrying illegal firearms.
And like, okay, here's the thing, okay? You can have a point. I don't care about the point. I don't care about the point of what you're doing. All right. If I'm on a public bus and like a cop gets on and he's like, show me your butthole. I'm like, what? He's like, show me your butthole. And I'm like, why? And he's like, I'm checking for bombs. I think you can sit here and tell me that checking everybody's butthole on a train is you listen, you put through a standard in the police that you should check everybody's butthole on a train and give them a cavity search because like there's a high possibility that somebody's holding a bomb in their butthole. All right, it's to deter people from hiding bombs in their butthole. I gotta tell you, I don't really give a shit what your like stated goal is. What it does is violate me. Okay, I start blushing, and that's not okay. While I'm out on the town. So this needs to stop, okay? I don't care about that. Like, you can tell me the purpose of what you're doing is 9 times out of 10. I don't give a shit if it doesn't fit the actual stated goal, okay? It didn't do anything good. It made the city worse. So it needs to go.
Absolutely not.
It 100%.
Are you in favor of gun control?
This is what I'm trying to say.
I'm a New Yorker.
Wait, what is this? What's stop and frisk then? How are you gonna go stop and frisk? Yeah, you know, it made some sense. Do you like what is happening?
I'm like a big gun guy, but
probably let me. This is my point.
Target guns, and that's why.
You definitely got to target illegal guns.
Agree with Emma,
sure.
but Emma's not going to agree with me. The idea that the police can decide to arbitrarily stop people because they might be carrying a firearm violates the Second and Fourth Amendments. Well, again, stop and frisk is completely unconstitutional.
That's why Fourth Amendment was in my mind.
Well, again, it's you're supposed to stop, question, and frisk, and usually it's based on reasonable suspicion, and they're supposed they're supposed to follow the Terry standard.
This idea.
Yeah, cops are also not supposed to, just execute people on the street. It doesn't really necessarily completely stop them either. So,
because a particular group of people may be carrying guns, we're going to go start stopping a whole bunch of them. I'm like, the Constitution protects our right to keep and bear arms in the first place. So now you're violating, you're ignoring the Second Amendment and using that and by ignoring it, now you're.
It is funny. This is the point where wacky libertarians.
This is why I'm actually
critical
of Bloomberg expansion of the program, because the way it used to work is that if you had a shooting suspect, you would have a description, you'd send cops to the area, and they would stop people with that description, ask them questions. And if there was reasonable suspicion, they would conduct a search. This is why under Giuliani, the maximum amount of stops in a year, and New York City of 8.5 million people, was 90,000 people. And under Bloomberg, it was something like 700,000, maybe 800,000 people. So he dramatically expanded the program to the point where I do think it was constitutionally violative.
So you are kind of to the...
And also, it doesn't make any sense because even if a large portion of the people carrying guns were black, a large portion, like the vast majority of black people aren't carrying guns. And so what you do is you just like now look for a massive group of people. You then just like completely, call out a complete massive group of people when the vast majority of them literally aren't doing anything. When it comes down to like the statistics, that you're not necessarily super more likely, if just like to be hit with like random, if you get like random people, you're not super more likely to get like to find illegal guns on these people, as it's shown that like stop and frisk was actually giga ineffective and didn't do anything besides make the city worse. If it works out the way that people say that it does, then it would work, but it didn't.
The right of Donald Trump on this, who has been releasing nonviolent offenders.
Donald Trump's First Step Act is absolutely terrible. It sets up a bunch of incentives.
Well, I mean, you're further right than I'd imagine a ton of this audience is. I mean, that's fine. That's like I'm not here
I'm not here to win over the audience. Well, I will win over the audience because I'm correct. But
no, audience is mostly moderate.
But Donald Trump's First Step Act had a lot of language about going soft on youthful offenders, and that's one of the reasons why a huge portion of the
I'm not left or right. Bro be like, I'm not left or right. And then when they see something political, they're like, whoop, whoop, whoop. Now see you all later. Just start sprinting right.
The increase in homicide that we're seeing is among young men, and specifically among young black men in this country.
I want to bring your guys' attention to this chart, because there's a lot that it shows. I know it's just murders,
right?
But we're talking about, you mentioned something about the 60s. For some reason, in 1962 to 64, we start seeing, from 1962 onward, a ridiculous spike in the murder rate, offenses per 100,000 population. I don't know exactly why. We can see around 1990, it starts to decline rapidly. There's a couple interesting points there. This is U.S. murder rate. So New York City's broken window policing has nothing to do with it. This is the entirety of the country. This could be one of two things. We when the leaded gasoline, that was the 80s, right?
I believe so, yeah.
We were getting rid of it.
And the last truck, I think for trucks, it was the 90s.
But this also coincides with one of the, if not the largest economic expansion, or I shouldn't say that now, because who knows how you define it with the pandemic and all that stuff. But we had a massive economic boom in the 90s. So this would interestingly correlate with the idea that as people started to get more things, like their lives started to improve, crime, murder rate started to drop dramatically.
Yeah, and I would say that that was a temporary kind of sugar high.
It is true. There was the .com boom. There was also the .com crash. Yeah, there was also, I mean, coming out of the 90s, a lot of people were doing a lot better than they were financially.
based on neoliberal
And a lot of people were in
policies of
prison,
Reagan and
so they couldn't do anything.
Clinton, where there was a lot of money that was released back into the public because of massive tax cuts. I mean, we can talk about confiscatory taxation if you'd like, and the top marginal tax rate. You know, the top marginal tax rate in 1961. It's funny that you brought up that figure. 1960, it's 91% compared to 37% now. But like
it went down in the 60s.
Reagan cut a bunch of taxes during that time period, and a lot of people got an influx in cash. And then sorry,
crime did drop.
Well, right, but that was temporary. That was temporary, right. And then the income inequality kind of set in, and the rich got richer and the poor got poorer, and that's mostly what I'm interested in talking about on my program.
Let me show you guys something which will add some context to the current crime spike.
Why would poor people commit
you see right
crime?
here this drop off after it looks like about 2007. There's a major drop off in murder, and then it spikes in 2014. The problem with a chart like this is that it doesn't account for technology. The reason the murder rate declined in 2007 was cell phones. So
I could be beating my dick instead of beating people up on the street. You're so right. I now have the entire world's collection of in the palm of my hand and my dick in the other. You don't understand. You don't understand. As you can see, crime going down, but iPhone, iPad go up. Makes a lot of sense.
When cell phones became ubiquitous, the ability to call emergency services became instantaneous. So when people were victims of violent crime, you had emergency service notified immediately. And so this resulted in a drop in the murder rate, but not in a drop in violent crimes. Not a direct correlation, meaning crime had been going down, but the murder rate dropped more than violent crime in general because people weren't dying. They were being stabbed, they were being robbed, they were being shot, and they were living. That's not murder.
I think response times also.
There is a chart, by the way, that you can look at because that actually pairs recessions with this murder chart. And again, the correlation is not really there. And as far as New York, you say that it had nothing to do with broken windows policing.
That map specifically was the U.S.
So yeah, I know, but you said it had nothing to do with broken windows policing. But that assumes that there isn't a greater decrease in crime in New York than nationwide, which is not the case. There was a greater decrease in the city of New York. Like Chicago had a decline too, but Chicago's homicide rate, which is almost on par with the city of New York, is 6 times higher per capita than the city of New York. And in terms of raw numbers, it's double, even though they're at 1/3 of the population, which is the same thing that I just said with different math. So New York became the safest big city, and our crime rate actually declined. And in fact, Freakonomics actually attributes this to the legalization of abortion, which happened in the city of New York pre Roe versus Wade. It was one of the 6 states that had it legal electively. So this is like a known thing that people have talked about and speculated on what the result is. Now,
I'm sorry, I still think it's really funny that Tim Pool still actually genuinely, unironically believes that like abortion is anti. He thinks abortion. He said like abortion's anti-trans, something like that, because some babies have that get aborted, some fetuses that get aborted have mental illnesses, and he's like, well, you got like having a mental illness is a prerequisite to being transgendered, and so basically all these liberals are executing all these trans autistic babies in the womb. It's a crazy take. It's a crazy take. It goes wild. It goes crazy. The gay gene. Anyways, I'm sorry. I just thought about that, but I don't know. It's really funny since he was talking about abortion. But yeah,
the environmental.
Wait, can I just ask you a question about that?
Sure.
What does the connection to what does crime
have? That's what Freakonomics says that the.
And also, like, what? And also, why does Chicago have such a high crime rate then? If they have 1/3 of the population, I mean, it would make sense to me because Chicago has a much worse economic outlook than New York does, and probably has ever had before the automotive industry and the manufacturing industry moved out. But like that would make a lot of sense in my world. But okay,
legalization of abortion, and they compare it to Ceausescu, whatever country he was the dictator of. They say that correlates with crime because they say all these unwanted children end up being born and then they end up committing crime.
That is certainly a claim. So that's how that works together then. You're saying that abortion should be illegal for that reason?
No. It would be legal abortion leads to less unwanted children being born. And again, you're
So
smiling,
are you in
but
favor of abortion?
I'm actually pro-choice, but not for this reason. But you're smiling. But the thing is, this is what was proposed in Freakonomics. I actually disagree with their analysis. They leave a lot of things out. But
so
again, I use that as an example to show that the New York decline did start before the national decline.
I'm almost positive that study has been called into question.
It is.
Just to clarify, you're saying more abortions meant lower crime? Is that what you're saying?
That's what Freakonomics asserted. It's in their little movie and it's in their original book.
I think that makes sense. If you've got two parents, if you've got one parent, they got a baby, that baby's getting food. You know, like you could have no job, you could be homeless. Someone's going to find.
Well, you know what I would love to decrease desperation in terms of.
I think, like, even though that is true, even though it's possibly true that abortion has an impact on crime, I think it would be better that instead of just relying on that, we make people not desperate. And so if they think about getting an abortion, they can have options besides get an abortion or starve. I think they should have more options than that. That's my opinion, though.
Of families in this country. I'm not sure if you've talked about it a ton on your program, Tim, but we should have made the child tax credit permanent that we expanded in the 2021 American Rescue Act.
Based in
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. So there was a tax credit that was in place, but during the pandemic, it was expanded to be a monthly payment. It also, the amount was increased, so it was up to $3,600 a month for 6 and under, $3,000 for 6 to 17. And then it also was expanded to include people who had too little income to qualify previously. We cut child poverty by nearly in half instantly. And the reason that we don't have it is because the entire Republican Party and Joe Manchin and Sinema essentially nixed it. But this is the kind of stuff that's possible in this country to make people less desperate. If you want less crime, make society a broader, more beneficial place for people with a bigger safety net, so people don't have to turn to desperation.
Real quick, this is the crazy thing. So I think the only people who disagree with that are establishment Republicans, like the prominent Republican Party members.
But you should talk about it more on your show.
I mean, I think that I'll go extreme with it. If after your second kid, no more taxes. Income tax, 0. Have 2 kids, no taxes.
I mean, I know that there have been certain proposals in places like Hungary that are like that, but they are heavily, heavily tilted towards heterosexual families as opposed to if a gay couple wants to adopt or have children.
We gotta allow our homosex to be able to get baby. That's what I think. That's what I think. You know, I could actually see that. I could see this happening. Tell me what you guys think. I could actually see a court case sometime in the future, like where 2 gay peoples in a relationship sue the federal government for giving tax cuts to people who have children because it's discriminatory based on sex. I could actually see that happening. And I think the court case would be really, really funny. That does sound really, really funny. I can see that happening. I really could. I can see like conservative gay homosexual people pulling something like that. I really could. I mean, technically it is. At the same time, you could argue that their dumbasses could just adopt if they so choose, and that and like adoption would also count.
If I don't agree with that because I want more taxation, frankly, so that we could have socialized health care. We could have a college for all act, which honestly you could pay for with a tax on Wall Street speculation. It would be incredibly easy. It's only $48 billion a year, which is less than the military budget increase that we did in 21 to 22, which was around $71 billion. I want to do that kind of stuff. And so getting rid of income tax, I would not be in favor of it.
For families.
But if you want to create tax incentives for families so that they can raise their kids and they aren't in poverty, I am all for that, Tim.
But to your point about nobody would disagree, I would 100% disagree with that because, again,
you want tax credits for people that have babies?
There is not a demonstration that these policies that these work in reducing crime. In fact, we see the opposite. If you put up that homicide chart, it starts increasing during the war on poverty, which is the...
Does it make people happier, though? Have we ever thought about if it it's something that makes people like happier and healthier and stuff like that. Have we thought about that?
Greatest increase in it's but sorry, go ahead.
Not talking about crime. In
relation, she said if you wanted to deal with crime, this is how.
Well, I'm trying to connect it to this, but like
right. But in the broader sense,
I think the most important thing to take away from this here is that every single Republican voted against the American Rescue Act and the expanded child tax credit. There is one party that is. Look, it's not good enough. I'm more obviously in the Bernie Sanders wing. I have
quick,
deep disagreements with Hillary Clinton-esque neoliberal politicians. But yeah, it's the Democratic Party in favor of policies that are going to be helping people on a day-to-day basis like this.
The Republicans voted against a broad bill that included one thing in it. Is that what happened?
Yeah, but they also fought tooth and nail about the actual child tax credit. This was a part of the Inflation Reduction Act negotiation.
Yeah, conservatives love to do that, where they're like, well, we voted for a bill that had like other things in it. We didn't just vote against feeding poor kids. We also voted against feeding poor mothers. Come on.
As well. They were not in favor of that too. And Joe Manchin, your senator, right? We're here in West Virginia.
Awful. We hate him.
I mean, you gotta you're a celebrity here, right, Tim, in West Virginia? You should call on Joe Manchin and say, hey, why don't you do this? Why are you not in favor of a child tax credit?
That dude is neoliberal.
Totally.
To perfection. It's like nobody in West Virginia wants the guy.
Right. I mean, he's very unpopular.
Well, I mean, it's just like everybody I feel like people keep saying everybody doesn't want Joe Manchin for the last like 3 election cycles, and then it's proven that everybody is actually pretty okay with Joe Manchin. I don't know. Maybe this time's the charm. Maybe he'll get kicked out this time. I mean, definitely a possibility, I guess. But I don't know. Every single time they're like, we need to get out this Joe Manchin guy. Nobody here likes him. Everybody votes for him anyways. Like he wins the election every single time.
Right.
He's way better than Republican.
He's actually the most popular politician in West Virginia history.
Go talk to some people in West Virginia.
I'm sure you could find people.
Dude.
Dude, there are like human beings here, and they like have opinions that aren't the same as the vast majority of people here. Talk to them sometime. No, actually. I don't need to talk to anybody, actually. I can look at their voting history. They very clearly want to keep Joe Manchin in office because they voted for Donald Trump by like plus 70, bro. If they didn't want him in office, it seems pretty easy to get him out. You're like the rubiest of ruby red states. Come here. Come here. Oh. Hi. Oh, sorry. I didn't see you there. If you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button. If you don't, it'll make Boo very sad. I know a bunch of you who are watching are not subscribed. Join the frenzy. You won't regret it. Thank you, Boo.